Guess what's back? Business and Brews, where real business talk meets real people, and always fueled by a good brew. This time we're going podcast first, bite-sized, insightful, and built for conversations you'll want to share. I'm your host, Matt Pierce, founder and CEO of Immediate, and I'll be sitting down with leaders, entrepreneurs, and friends to talk about leadership, growth, and the stories that make business worth talking about. So grab your favorite brew, pull up a chair, and let's talk business the way it's meant to be talked about. Business and Brews, back, bolder, better than ever. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Business and Brews. I'm your host, Matt Pierce, and today we're joined by Corey Towe, CEO of WildSparq. Corey, nice to have you here.
Man, blessed to be here. Excited to have this conversation, Matt.
Me too. We were just chatting before we got started. I think there's going to be some good things we can dig into. So as the name suggests, Business and Brews, I'm fueled probably too much coffee so far this morning. I was actually thinking maybe I shouldn't do another coffee, but I usually wait until after lunch to get my next one. But I just did like a half cup, so hopefully I don't talk too fast. I actually listened to one of these recently, and I usually listen on like 1.7x speed, and I was like, man, I sound awfully fast. So I had to dial it back to like 1.4. So hopefully I'm not talking too fast today for everybody. But Corey, I would love to hear what you're being fueled by today. And so tell us what you got going on over there.
Yeah. I'm kind of a no frills guy, means to an end, straight black for me. First thing in the morning, fuel my body, get going. I do have the 2-3 cup day as well, Matt, in the job that I do. But usually it's just straight black. From my startup background, I've spent many days and camped out in Starbucks, trying all the concoctions, but I always default back to I'm just straight black, means to an end, fuel my body. Let's run after it. But I will say this though, and if you ask me that question 2 months from now, it may be a little bit different. But I have a 15-year-old daughter, big fan of 7 Brew.
Okay,
they just opened a 7 Brew in where I live here in Birmingham, probably 2 months ago, and she's trying to convert me. So who knows?
Yeah.
My favorite brew in a couple of weeks or a couple of months could be one of the many variety of drinks that they have at 7 Brew. I've tried several of the energy drinks and quite tasty and powerful. So ask me again in 2 months.
Okay.
It may be 7 Brew moving up to the top of the list. Love 7 Brew.
Cool. We'll do a follow up here in a couple of months and see where you stand. I got a crew of girls who like 7 Brew as well. So it's I'm spending a lot of money there. I haven't gotten like hooked on it yet, but we'll have to resync on that soon. So tell us about your career. I know we'll get into your newly appointed role as CEO of WildSparq, which first off, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
But let's talk about the past and let's talk about what you've done in your career, what's brought you up here. I know you just mentioned some startup background, which is always fun to hear. So let's get started there.
Yeah, very, what I would say, unconventional background. I grew up in Northwest Georgia, an hour north of Atlanta, went to school at the opposite end of Georgia at Georgia Southern University. Became a Christian in college through my fraternity. That's another story in and of itself, how in the world that happens. But I did. And out of college, I went to work for a college campus ministry called Campus Outreach, and which I know you had Josh Etris on your podcast recently. And Josh Etris actually, randomly, we didn't know each other, but plays a big part in my story of being at WildSparq that I'll share with you. But went into campus ministry, loved it because it was entrepreneurial, it was pioneering, it was building things, which I love to do. And it was really heavy people development, leadership development, which was something else that was a conviction and passion of mine. So I did that for 6 years. I thought I would do it the rest of my life. But after 6 years, different calling, different plan, took a left-hand turn, was living in Charleston, South Carolina at the time, and moved to Atlanta or back to Georgia, living with my mother-in-law, trying to figure out what I was going to do with what's next. And fortunately, I had a friend who was part of a startup in Atlanta, a tech startup, who gave me a call. And he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He saw really the transferable things that I had developed during my time in ministry that could translate into this startup world. And if he didn't believe in me, I wouldn't have believed in myself to go take the leap. But he called me and was like, hey, we've got this SaaS company. And I was like, Brian, what is SaaS? I didn't know what SaaS meant. Software as a service.
You obviously did not have a 15-year-old at that point. Because
I did not. Yeah, I did not. We had a 3-month-old. Our oldest son was three months at the time whenever we moved. But he was like, yeah, we have this tech company that we're starting. It's a product for the deregulated energy market in the state of Texas. And I was like, wow, that sounds complicated. I don't even know what that means. But he asked me to come in and lead some projects. And it was it was probably one of the best decisions that I made for my career because, as you know, being part of the startup environment, and I was there for 7 years, and it was a tremendous growth story. We grew the company significantly, but being a part of the startup company, I got the experience, or I got to experience a lot of different parts of leading different parts of the organization, probably when I shouldn't have, honestly.
Right.
There are times where it's like, okay, there's probably somebody else that's better to lead this, but I got exposed to all kinds of aspects of leading a company that have been really built the foundation for what's happened since that point. And so it was a private equity, ultimately a private equity owned company. So I got the experience of the private equity world, mergers and acquisitions, building this high growth company, expanding into different markets, different products. And it was a phenomenal experience. And so I did that for 7 years. We grew it. Ultimately, it was flipped to another private equity firm and then split apart over time. But for me, from a personal perspective, it laid the foundation from an experience that really has been built on since then. And so
Right.
I left that, we started my own company in Atlanta, did that for 3 years. That was in the tech space. And then really felt called to move back to Charleston, South Carolina, where we lived for a little bit, and moved back and made a phone call to a guy that used to be on my team that was part of a company in Charleston that was just just went public and was in the benefits administration space. I was like, hey, I need a job. I'm moving to Charleston. I feel called to be there. And I think that's the trend. It's like I'm making decisions because I'm called to a place and I'm figuring out what I'm going to go do
Mm-hmm.
whenever I get there. But joined this company, and it was my first experience in the public space, which was very different, but different scale, different experiences, really solidifying some of the convictions that I had along the way about how to build and lead a company, but really giving me the breadth of experience that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise to prepare me for, like, when you're, as you know, when you're the leader of a company, you got to be able to flex all kinds of different
Right.
places to be able to support your team. And so, but it was at the end of that, I was there for 6 years, and was really wanting to start my own company again. And I actually left the company to start a company just like WildSparq. I was going to start a leadership development software
Really?
company. And about a month in, I met Josh Etris. And we were part of this community teaching us how to maximize LinkedIn. So, and there was a guy in there, Josh Etris. He had a similar background that I did. He worked with Campus Outreach, was in this leadership development company called WildSparq. And so we connected just to network. And he said, hey, I think you should talk to the founder of WildSparq and another company called Fireseeds, Cord Sachs, just to talk to him. I didn't know at that time, which I know Josh shared this on your podcast. I didn't know at that time he was going through his own process of transitioning.
Right.
He didn't share that with me. Whenever he talked to me, he was like, hey, I think in his mind, he thought, hey, Corey could be a good fit for WildSparq as he's transitioning out. And so I started talking to Cord. We probably talked for about 5 months, and I processed through it. It was a very difficult decision because I have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, one of them was going into their senior year. One was going into their freshman year of high school. Then I had my
Wow.
daughter who was younger. And it's like, that's a big deal to pick up, move from Charleston to Birmingham, Alabama, but ultimately felt called to do that. And we did it. And so started at WildSparq almost 5 years ago at this point.
Wow.
And really, I think that it's like, how do I get to the position that I'm in? It's like I learned early on, and I got the advice that I need to make the decision to show up every day and exceed expectations.
Mm-hmm.
That was my really approach. And
Right.
whenever it was the startup in Atlanta or the company in Charleston or my own stuff or here at WildSparq, and what I learned is that if you do that, it's hard to be ignored.
Right.
People notice that, and it creates more and more opportunities for you to be able to get experiences and build skills. And so coming into WildSparq, that was my perspective. And I stepped into WildSparq for the most part, running the company at that point, and really starting to change the trajectory of the company that we've been working on for the last 5 years. That are some of the exciting things that we're doing. And so I would say that it's an unconventional journey. I had a
Right.
lot of opportunities to do things that stretched me way beyond probably what I should have been stretched at that point. But all those things stacked up over time to be able to prepare me to be able to take on more responsibility and ultimately be in the position that I'm in today, to where I get to lead a team that is fantastic. And Cord has built an incredible culture. And part of that is you step into an environment that is so healthy. It's kind of easier to lead in that environment.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, it's really unconventional.
Well, I'll say what kind of sticks out to me, two things. One, and we can touch on this here more in a minute, of just like feeling called to something and feeling and having this belief that like this is where I need to be. And I'd love to unpack that more in a minute. But the other thing that sticks out, and it's something that I believe is a consistent theme when we talk to high achievers like yourself, I'm willing to stretch myself. You said it. I found myself doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing. I probably wasn't prepared to be doing. I think so many people get into this. There's people who get into this zone of like, I'm just going to do my job and I'm going to punch the clock at 5 p.m. and I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch Netflix and hang out with my family. And hey, that's totally fine. This world needs people like that, right? And those are people who are doers. And then there's people who are builders, and there's people who are always going to stretch. I had somebody a couple of weeks ago that said something to me, and they're like, "Do you ever sit still? Do you ever just have a day where you're like, I'm just going to veg out on the couch?" And I'm like, I have days that I want to do that. And then, I get started on it, or I'm like, I'm not going to do anything today. And then, I just get going, and it not necessarily work stuff, right? Sometimes it's just, I'm just constantly trying to do things. And I think this was right after I'd let him hear like a song that I'd made with AI on Suno. And so he's like, "You're making music
Right.
on Suno?" So I say that because it's something that I wonder, and I would love your take on this, is that like, that effort and energy and just like mindset, is that something that you think you were born with? Is it something that you saw in someone else or in other people as you were coming up, that you admired and wanted to be like that? Or do you think it's something you've just like taught yourself and really stretched that muscle over the years?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that wiring is a big part of it, and we do a lot of that at WildSpark with assessments in our product and just helping not just our internal team but our customers get insights about people that allow them to more personalize and be precise in the way that they lead them. And so I spend a lot of time in that world because of the nature of what we do. But I think part of it's wiring. I don't know if you're familiar with the working genius, but
I'm not.
Patrick Lencioni, the Table Group, his company, they created a productivity assessment called the Working Genius
Okay.
that probably about 3 years ago, we did it and we really embrace it internally. And it's also part of the WildSpark product that our customers get. But it basically is telling you in the flow of work, what are your geniuses? And for me, my geniuses are invention and tenacity. And so and I can unpack that more later if you want. But the tenacity part of it is more the wiring, right? It's like
Hmm.
I struggle, and there's the dark side of that as well, right? I always feel like I'm not going fast enough, and a lot of times I don't pause to be able to even celebrate the win
Right.
because I'm ready to move on to the next thing. So
Right.
a lot of it is wiring, but then there is the part of it where I had people in my life early on who really helped me understand the importance of excellence, who helped me to understand the importance of going the extra mile, the importance of, like I mentioned earlier, uh, exceeding expectations and making the decision every day to do that. And I remember I heard you tell the story on one of your podcasts about you showing up to work at, before the CEO did, and parking near him, and he would come in and see you. It's like the same mindset of that. It's like I know that that's it's not just a decision to impress someone else, but it's the work ethic that's needed to be able to get noticed, so that when the CEO thinks about an opportunity, they think about you
Right.
because you've proven over time that you're willing to do what it takes, and you're committed to the mission, you're committed to the people around you. And so I think for me it's a combination of both. Wiring plays a big part of it, but then also I've had models in my life where I've seen people what they did to achieve success, and there is a work ethic that is part of it that will set yourself apart from other people who maybe aren't willing to do that.
Right. No, that's really good. I think it may have actually even been on the episode with Josh, because we started talking about the Braves. I was a huge Braves fan when I was a kid, and it stuck with me when I remember and he basically said, "My dad told me when I was growing up, there's always going to be people that are faster than you, that are better batters than you, that are better fielders than you, all these things. However, there's one thing you can control, and that's how hard you work. And so you can outwork people. Being able to outwork people is going to make up for the lack of skills in certain areas." And so I just always kind of took that mentality and approach as well. And it's a consistent theme that I'm seeing with people like yourself that say like, I'm going to go that extra mile. I'm going to really push. Is it something that you take time? I guess now, and we'll get into your transition into CEO, but as in your previous roles and now as CEO, is it something that you keep an eye out for with your team members? Is it something you're consistently watching of like who's taken that extra step? Who do I know as my, when I need something and I know I got to depend on somebody, this is who I'm turning to. Is that something you kind of catalog and really, really look for?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you see some behaviors that come out, like who is bringing me problems, but also bringing me fixes, right? Or at least engaging in the conversation. Because I think as depending on the culture that you're in, and if you're the CEO or you're an executive, a lot of times people could look for you to come in and rescue and save the day and solve the problems, but it's not scalable. I'm not scalable. Number one, I'm not scalable. Number two, I'm not smart enough to solve every problem. With the complexity of business today, I can't, or anybody can't be a domain expert in every single aspect of the business. And so, yeah, I mean, the people who stand out to me are the ones who are willing to engage and have an ownership mindset. They really they think of their role not in the context of their role, but as an owner. One of my most favorite questions to ask people, this was even before I had the title of CEO, is they would bring me a problem, and I would say, "Hey, congratulations, you just got promoted, Matt. You're the CEO of WildSparq. What are you going to do if you were the CEO for today? What decision are you making?" And part of that is to get them to think that way, right? To start to develop strategic thinking, and but also ultimately for them to be empowered to be trusted to make more and more decisions. And that answer to the question gives me an idea of where they are. But the people who stand out to me and throughout my career are the ones who are willing to go the extra mile, and the ones who are exceeding expectations, the ones who are like the third line belief in what we're doing, and they're willing to do what it takes. And there's seasons where it requires more than less, depending on where the company is. But they definitely stand out. And whenever there's a problem, when there's a problem that I need to solve, or there's a project that I need to initiate, there's no doubt that the first people that come to mind are the ones that I think that could excel because they've proven over time that they're willing to do it. And so
Hmm.
it does influence how I think about it. And for those people who are young in your career, it will create opportunities for you when it comes to promotion, and when it comes to, hey, like I think you shared the story of, I think it was the same CEO, right, that it was expanding the company and came off the stage and said, all right, it's yours, go for it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you get that if you didn't have that work ethic that he noticed,
Right.
that brought you to mind whenever there was an opportunity that was being created in the business. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
That's really good. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because I do feel like I've heard from a lot of people that have been watching this or listening to this. A lot of them are in that earlier stage of their career, or kind of like middle stage of their career, where they're thinking, how do I take the next step? What are the things I can do? How do I continue to invest in myself and my skill set? Obviously, if they're listening to a podcast about business, they're trying to educate themselves and get better. And they're trying to hear from people that have been there, done that, and have navigated some of those things. So I think that that's a natural segue into this part of the conversation, which is a lot of the people I've talked to that have your title gave themselves that title, right? When I started a media, I was like, yeah, I'm the CEO. Like, easiest way to become a CEO is start your own company and make yourself the CEO. And a lot of learning comes along with that. A lot of learning comes along with it anyways, but by starting and going, here I am, I'm going to do all these things, versus what you've just gone through, which is a progression from coming into a business 5 years ago and recently being announced as the new CEO of WildSparq. So I would love to hear you, and specifically before we got started, I mentioned we were going to talk about this, but I didn't want to have the conversation because I want it to be fresh. I want to hear it for the first time along with everybody else who's about to hear it. Talk to us about what that looked like, and kind of with an earmark on it of, are there things along the way beyond what we've already talked about today that some of the people that are listeners that are thinking about how they continue to climb the career ladder, what are things that they could do to continue positioning themselves to be in a spot, whether they want to be a CEO or not, right? It may be that I want to take that next step to a VP level, or I want to go from VP to senior VP, or I want to go from manager to director. Like, all along the way, I think that there's value that we can learn, and especially for somebody going from like where you are going into a CEO role. I'd love to hear kind of what that process was like, and what you learned along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say this. I think because I have a lot of conversations with inside WildSparq, outside WildSparq, people who are itchy to be promoted. And I'll say this, if you're not crushing your current role, then it's hard to be promoted. Like, and so go crush your current role. And unless it's a situation where it's just not a fit, right? There's a better fit to move you somewhere else. But the most important thing that I can do today, that I can do today and that others can do is go and crush the role that you're in. And that will create opportunities for you. And so my perspective coming into WildSparq was to listen, learn, then lead. It's like, okay, I need to listen a lot. I need to learn from what I listen to, and then I can be more effective leading versus a lot of times whenever people come into organizations, it's the opposite, right? It's like, I'm just going to hit the ground running. I have to prove my value and change some things, and they change the wrong things and they lose the team along the way. And so I was given that advice, and I've had these transition periods in my career where I've learned that the hard way sometimes as I've transitioned from role to role, either to a new organization or within the organization. So coming in, it was a mindset of listen, learn, then lead, which allowed me to build credibility with the team and allowed me to earn trust with the team. And so that was a starting point. If I didn't have trust with the team, then I'm not being promoted anywhere. It doesn't it doesn't matter. And so that's one. And then I would say I focused on my say do ratio. And that was a big thing to me. It's like, okay, I want to be known as someone who says they're going to do something, and then I'm going to do it. And I'm going to have that ratio be as tight as possible so that I don't lose some credibility or trust when it comes to my effectiveness in following through on what I say I was going to do. And so I just put my head down. And WildSparq at that point, we probably doubled since then as far as size. A lot of it too was being able to come in and deploy the expertise that I had. WildSparq's a SaaS company. Cord, who's founded WildSparq, is his first tech company that he's founded. He had Fireseeds, which is a recruiting firm. And so being able to come in and fill gaps and in filling those gaps, be able to stack wins and stack credibility, it just built trust with Cord. At the end of the day, Cord's the founder, right? And Cord at that point was the CEO and the founder. And if he didn't believe that he could trust me, number one, then he wouldn't promote me. And he didn't believe that I haven't demonstrated that not only am I crushing my current job, but I am doing things outside of my job description and crushing those as well. He wouldn't have promoted me. And so over time, there was this progression of expanding responsibility. Even though the title of CEO wasn't mine, I'm operating like a CEO within WildSparq and taking on more and more responsibility and solving more and more problems that Corey doesn't have to solve, right? And then ultimately it was just like natural. It's like, okay, Corey, you've kind of evolved and you're doing the job now. Let's give you the title kind of thing versus we'll give you the title and then we'll change your job. And so that's the way from an executive perspective that I think a lot of promotions work is how do you do that? Now, I know in WildSparq, I had a pretty good level of autonomy to be able to do that. Other people may not have that, but you have to find ways to outside of your job description, add value, outside of your job description, develop skills, outside of your job description, go and solve problems. And people will see that and be like, oh, it's a natural, Matt. You should be the VP of whatever, whenever that opportunity opens itself. And so I followed that progression of over time, proving myself and then taking on more and more responsibility and getting more and more stuff done through the team to where it was a no-brainer. Cord's like, hey, I want to relinquish the CEO, go focus on Fireseeds full time. And I trust, because trust has been built over 5 years, that this thing's going to continue to move forward, align with the vision and the mission of what we're trying to accomplish at WildSparq.
Wow, that's great. It's so encouraging to hear. Thanks for your transparency on that, because I think that, again, I think people that are listening to this that are thinking about what's next and knowing that they obviously you play a part in it, but people who are just checking the box, again, there are a lot of people out there who are perfectly content with the role they have and the income they have and the work-life balance and all those things, and that's totally fine. But then there's other people who are always looking and always thinking about where do I go? I mean, my wife is kind of like this. I remember when we first started dating, and she's like, I've got this 10-year plan that I wrote when I came out of college, and I'm coming up on the 10 years and I'm readjusting, what's my next 10-year plan? And they're always thinking about those things and how do I get to that role or that position or that level of my career and level of authority. And it's just it's really encouraging to hear someone who's kind of gone through this, and it sounds like gone through it in a really thoughtful way. and kind of done the right things in order to get there, and now can kind of reflect back and share that. So thanks for sharing that. I know we've got about 5 more minutes left, and a number of things I'd like to still cover with you, but I think most importantly, one of the things that you touched on at the very beginning that I'd like to come back to here in the last few minutes, and we may have you back for another conversation because this is there's a lot more we could cover here, and we'll have to find out about the Seven Brews stuff in the future, anyways. So talk to me about this. Is something that I've had a few people share on here, and I'd love to understand like your feeling around it and how you felt this. But you said you felt called. I know you said that you were a Christian, you were saved in college. How do you feel that calling? And like, because to me it's a really there's there's it's I don't want to say it's easy. It's easier to say I felt called to go do XYZ when someone sends you a job offer, right? Or someone says, "Hey, I want you to come do this." And you're like, "Well, that feels like, someone from up above is speaking to me because I just got this offer and that's where I should go." But this is a pretty bold thing. You said you went back to Charleston before you even had a job there. So you felt this tug to go to Charleston and then figure it out once you got there. Can you talk to us about that? I'd really love to understand more, like how that feeling came about, and kind of obviously it worked out. So it sounds like you did the right thing. But can you talk about like that one, and then I'll shut up and let you answer. But one, like how you felt that, but two, in a marriage, how you could convey that to your wife and get her comfortable with that, of like, we're going to go somewhere before we have a job, and trust that there's something there that we're supposed to be there and that's going to support us. Can you unpack a little bit of that for us?
Yeah, I'll do my best. By no means am I an expert on it, but I think that when you talked about like my wife Shannon, and these are not independent conversations or independent decisions, and the Charleston one was, in fact, in a lot of cases, there are parallel, like independent but parallel motions in play for both of us, and so I think the key thing for me was yeah, I had this impression and signal that, hey, we want to get back to Charleston. And for us, it was, we wanted to get back to Charleston so that we could get back closer to college ministry in a vocation. Like for us I'll work a job. I'm not going into ministry, but could we serve in a capacity and get back closer to it? And we lived in Atlanta at the time, and it was just hard, right? We lived in Alpharetta. We weren't near a university. And so we couldn't live the impact channel out. We have the income channel, but then there's the impact channel. And sometimes they're the same channel. Sometimes it's different, right? For people. And so I'm going through the process of walking with God myself and praying and surrendering and trying to figure out what's next. I had a startup at that time, was still 18 months into building it. It's like, this timing is terrible because my team is here, and what am I going to do with this? And it probably means if I move to Charleston that there's other decisions that are dominoes that fall after that.
Right.
And so a lot of it was the prayer and the conversations with my wife Shannon, and her affirming and confirming, plus other wise people in my life. It's like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I had a mentor in Atlanta at the time. It's like, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And he could say, hey, I think you're crazy, but you should lean into it and figure it out. And so we made the move to Charleston. But then the second one was, and this one was more weighty, was whenever we moved to Birmingham, because we were in Charleston. Again, I was about to do a startup or really just started it. But the difference was I had kids that were older. And so now it's an impact on other people. It's not just me and my wife. And it's like, okay, I got to consider the sacrifice of that are being made if we go. And so it was really through wisdom, counsel, prayer, and then ultimately it's just a decision that you make, because I haven't been in a situation to where it's like, man, this is 100% in, and you're going to 100% be successful if you do this. Usually it doesn't work like that way, except it hasn't for me. And so through prayer, through wisdom, through counsel, and for me, it also was, is there a bigger story being written that is beyond a job? Like, I don't think I would have moved to Birmingham for WildSparq. I mean, WildSparq's a big part of the story, but as we were processing through it, even moving to Charleston, it's like, okay, I don't want to move for a job. I can get a job in Atlanta and stay safe and be around my family and, the routine that we have, but there needs to be a bigger calling of story that's being written that we can be a part of in Birmingham or in Charleston. And so that's been a major part for me is getting confirmation that that's possible
Hmm.
if we make the decision. And there's ups and downs. I mean, moving to Birmingham has been very difficult in a lot of ways for my kids and for just starting everything over again. But it's been interesting to see the micro moments, to see God in the story, and the story isn't over yet. And so, but WildSpark's a big part of it, but there's a bigger story that's being written. And so, when I think of calling, it's like I'm being called into this bigger story, and I can participate at a deeper level in Birmingham and in Charleston. I want to have some visibility into that as far as signals that these are the right moves to make and a wise move to make for me and my family.
Yeah, it's really good. It's super helpful, I think, for people to hear that as well, regardless of where, listeners stand from a religious or spiritual perspective. I think just the like if I took a step back, just the process that you went through, it wasn't I felt this calling or I felt this pull on my heart. And so I said, let's go do it. It was, I felt this, I sought wise counsel. I discussed it with my wife. It was an ongoing conversation. Um, the deal with moving here. Like you and Cord talked for, I think you said 5 months, right? Like these aren't, and I think that's an important thing to point out. These aren't rash emotional decisions. I think I want to go, I think this is going to work. I'm just going to go. I talk to my family all the time. Probably the thing that my kids get the most annoyed hearing me say, my wife too, maybe, is we don't make long-term decisions on short-term emotions. And so it's to be thoughtful, to seek wise counsel, to make sure that, shouldn't say make sure, to put as much effort into it on the front end to put yourself in a better position on the back end, right? So I'm going to talk to mentors. I'm going to talk to obviously family. I'm sure there was a lot of discussions with your kids as it got more serious and more serious about moving to Birmingham. And so I think that's a really good thing for people to hear. And obviously, as a Christian, including prayer in that and feeling a sense of peace as you're making those decisions. I think we all know life's hard. We also all know that your career and your family are two really big aspects of your life, and in some cases, you can feel those things pulling in different directions. And I've seen that the happiest, what I would consider the most successful people, are the ones that can align those things, that can align your career and your family life and make sure that those are working really well together and that you feel supported at home. So that when you have a rough day at the office and you step into the house, you've got someone there to support you and embrace you and encourage you. And it sounds like that thoughtfulness and effort and energy that you put into this is really a big part of that. So really, really helpful and thankful that you were able to share that with us today.
Yeah. Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, and I think this is something that I learned early on, or at least was challenged to, is leadership is costly. Like it costs. Like there's a cost to leadership. There's a great. I remember seeing Kirby Smart. I'm not a Georgia fan, but seeing Kirby Smart at the SEC Media Days a couple years ago. It's a great YouTube clip where he talks about the cost of leadership and a note that he has on his board behind him that reminds him of some of the hard decisions that you have to make as a leader. And so I think considering that, because there's a lot of people aspire to be a leader in an organization, but there is a cost that comes along with it that you have to consider and really think through. And there are rewards definitely of doing it, and it's less about like rewards that are like tangible things. It's more about the reward of making a difference and driving a vision forward and the people you get to impact, and you get to see people do things they never thought they could do, or teams
Hmm.
do things teams never thought they could do, and that's the reward that you get when you're sitting in the leadership seat. But there are costs to it as well, whether that is, for me, the cost of moving my middle son, who was an eighth grader, into ninth grade and having a horrible first 3 months, right, at school, trying to build relationships. But at the end of the day, there has to be a bigger purpose that is driving the vision of what we're a part of. And you're right, on those hard days, I've got to come back to the why and the purpose, and I remind myself of that, and then use that as my brew, my fuel, to be able to step into the next day.
So good. Well, Corey, thank you for being on here today. I I think I got a lot of value out of this. I'm sure people listening did as well. So thanks for your leadership and thanks for your candor today with us. And looking forward to watching you continue to grow WildSparq and do great things. So glad to have you here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you everybody, and look forward to the next one. Have a good day.